All right, so if you guys haven't met me before or heard the podcast, I'm Keith Townsend from the CTO Advisor or thectoadvisor.com. The handle is at CTO Advisor on the Twitter. So in theory, my imaginary friend at Punching Clouds should be somewhere here, and we would be having a discussion on him convincing me, a enterprise architect during the day, primarily responsible for a Fortune 200 SAP infrastructure, on why I should trust VMware VSAN to run my non-prod workloads. But since Rollison isn't here, I have to improvise a little bit. He had a conflict, so I have to improvise a little bit. And we'll talk through a high level, what is SAP HANA? Why are we even having a conversation about whether or not you should run it on vSAN or a traditional three-tier architecture, and some of the considerations you want to have in mind. So first off, what is SAP HANA? SAP HANA is basically made up of two components. There is SAP HANA, the analytics platform, which allows you to combine both the database and the application layer analytics into one physical server or virtual server. We'll get to that in a minute. And then there's S4, so SAP HANA on S4. S4 is the simple finances. It allows you to basically move all of your processes that you've run traditionally in SAP on Oracle into SAP S4. It collapses the database, analytics, and application layer into one layer. So it's converged from an application perspective. If it's converged from an application perspective, why can't we converge the infrastructure into a single application or into a single platform? That's a good question. We'll go into deep conversation about this in what I would like to call Keithtober. Jonathan came up with that term, Keithtober. In October, I'm on the full vBrownbag US calendar for all 3 days. I'll be doing a presentation on careers, a presentation on vSAN running on Intel NUC, and we'll cap it off with a presentation on SAP HANA running on vSAN. So this is a primer for that late October talk. First off, the characteristics of HANA from an application. So why is HANA any different from any other application, especially in a virtualized sense? HANA is an in-memory database in itself. The non-analytics part, we're talking about just the database. The database is an in-memory database, similar to the Spark open source project. As opposed to looking at super high-speed disks to be able to run complex queries against a SQL-based database, we're running queries against an in-memory database. So everything that you would have traditionally pulled from disk, either from a real-time database or a copy of that database specifically generated for queries. If you've dealt with Oracle and SQL before, you know that you really can't run queries, especially complex queries, off of your production database. You usually have to make a export of that database and have that on super fast disk so that you can query those databases. One of the challenges with that, you have to count disk to be able to get the correct number of IOPS, spreadsheets. It's just all just crazy math. HANA and other in-memory databases make this process simpler and a little bit more performant. We can take a 1 terabyte Oracle database, basically compress that down into a 512 gigabyte in-memory database. So you have a system, a physical or virtual system with, let's say, 500 or 768 gig of memory. You take your 1 terabyte database, convert it into a HANA database, and now instead of worrying about IOPS, you have other challenges. But let's talk about the advantages from a business perspective first. You're now able to do things that you weren't able to do before. It goes from not just faster, but being able to do stuff you couldn't do before. So when you're talking about complex queries, when we're taking data from separate data sources, let's say we're taking data from SAP ECC, then Hadoop, unstructured data, and we want to run big data analytics across that. In a traditional environment, that was very difficult to do. We'd have to have super fast underlying disks to do so. The additional processing, we'd have to have this complex network architecture to achieve the business outcomes we're looking to achieve. When we collapse all of that into an in-memory database, we go from either queries taking hours to run or just timing out to being able to run the same queries in minutes, if not seconds. That's the business value of SAP HANA. So let's talk about some of the technical challenges that presents. From a pure resource perspective, we're moving the I/O layer from disk to the memory layer. So obviously we're reducing one bottleneck. The original bottleneck was disk, and we're exposing a new bottleneck. It's no longer I/O, but that bus to the CPU and what your CPU can do. So unlike many virtualized workloads where CPU is no longer the constraint, in a SAP HANA, or we can apply the same thing to Spark, in these environments, we now expose a new layer of bottleneck or system performance issues, which is the CPU. And we're not accustomed to that normally in the virtualization arena. And because of that, SAP has put extremely, let's say, difficult constraints around SAP for certifying SAP HANA in certain environments. If you follow SAP HANA at all, you will remember that SAP has limited the total size of your SAP scale-up database to about 2 terabytes. Why is that the case? SAP is definitely concerned, and these are my words, definitely concerned about performance when it comes to the ratio from memory to CPU. If you oversubscribe memory or CPU, you will experience performance issues. What's the primary advantage of virtualization? The ability to oversubscribe memory and CPU. So why virtualize? So this is where I would ask my friend Rollison right here, hey Rollison, why would I want to virtualize HANA to begin with? And more so, why would I even run it on vSAN? So I'll put on my Rollison hat. I'm making a little noise, my Captain vSAN shirt. So here's Captain vSAN. And I'll switch over to Rollison. Keith, man, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you run SAP on vSAN? vSAN is the bomb, man. Wait, hold on. Let me put my skateboard up first and tell you about the advantages of vSAN. So first, Keith, let me tell you that SAP hasn't certified vSAN for SAP HANA yet. But as you know, VMware gives you SAP allows you to bring a TDI or tailored data center infrastructure to your SAP environment for non-prod. So non-prod, you can basically do whatever you want with SAP's blessing. With that said, VMware has done some excellent testing for VMware VSAN running SAP HANA. Rollison, I find that hard to believe, man. You're telling me that I'm pretty stuffy. You know, I am the CTO advisor. I can use VMware VSAN for my non-prod instances, and I'll stop the switching back and forth. But the gist of it is, no, I can't do it because Rollo's just so exciting, man. This would be, if Rollinson was really here, this would be awesome. But man, you gotta understand the performance tests that we've run so far have been out of this world. I know you might be thinking, well, disk and all flash may not be a big deal, but at some point you have to load that 2 terabyte database into that 1 terabyte of memory. So when you boot up and start up your system, how long does it take for you to load those tables into memory? If you have an all flash configuration, you can do that. And you talked about oversubscription and not being able to oversubscribe memory and CPU. This is non-prod. We can do that, and we can move workloads from vSphere node to vSphere node running on VSAN, which, as you know, those SAP HANA production appliances cost a lot of money. So you can save a bundle of cash by going with by going with VSAN. Rollison, you know what? You've piqued my interest. I think I might have to explore this whole VMware VSAN SAP thing. It'd be nice if in October you joined me for the vBrownbag Keith-tober, and we talked a little bit more about why and how you can run SAP HANA on VSAN for non-prod instances. For sure, dog, I ain't gonna let you down like I did today. Thanks, guys.